Here are the facts first.
So how are Christians responding? By putting up billboards of their own and then underlying the word Christ.
You're also putting religion back in the closet as well.
Christians are tired of being bullied for their faith in the public square.
I don't even need a Bible for that.
With claims the church is not just failing to sufficiently address domestic violence, it's both enabling and concealing
Probably
it.
we should be debating a bill requiring every American to attend a church of their choice.
Do you want your children to depend upon witchcraft instead of Jesus? Harry Potter's dangerous.
Roaring lion seeking someone to devour, but resist him.
Wait until you see what the activists are about to unleash on American Christians.
The protesters, though, started fighting amongst themselves as different factions of Christianity collided.
The Roman Catholic Church is just as satanic as the Black Mass.
Before I start this morning, I just want to say that there was a lot of adapting that was happening during the children's moment, and I am so thankful for a congregation and pastors who are willing to go with the flow. We had a children's moment planned, and then we looked over, and y'all saw how many youth there were, and so we thought, we'll just lay hands on them. And then they just kept coming out of the woodwork, and 6 hands were not going to be enough. And so as I preach this morning, what I want to say, that since you saw all of those young people before you, that you will hear this and take it seriously, because those young people need a church in the future that they can trust, that they can depend on to be present. And I know that First Methodist has a history and we have a future, and so I want us to live into that. So it seems appropriate, since we had all of these children and youth here, that my opening story has to do with pizza. You see, I think that pizza is the ultimate move-in food. When you have been unpacking boxes all day, the last thing you want to do is think about dinner, do the dishes, or eat something fancy. So what do? You order a pizza, you sit on the floor, and you feast. So when David and I moved into our house in Deer Park, there was a Pizza Hut on the end of our street. So we finished unloading that day, and we did what all good Americans do. We ordered a pizza. But you know, the problem with ordering pizza in the Horton household is that I'm allergic to dairy. So, yeah, I know, that was a little bit of a groan. So when we order a pizza, we have to order a pizza with no cheese. And I remember calling the Pizza Hut and being very explicit. We would like a large supreme pizza with no cheese. And they assured me that they got our order. And then we went to pick up the pizza and we opened the box and there was cheese on the pizza. And so we decided it's because we were new in town. Deer Park's not that large, and so we thought, well, they just don't know us, they don't know our order, we need to give them another shot. They are, after all, at the end of our street. On 3 different occasions, we ordered pizza from that Pizza Hut. And on 3 different occasions, they repeated back the order to me. They said they got it, they promised me cheeseless pizza. And then we would go to the store to pick up the pizza, and we would open the box, and there would be cheese on my pizza. One time it was so bad that I texted my mom a picture of our fridge. It took them 5 tries to get the pizza right. And so they didn't know what to do with all this pizza, so they gave 5 large pizzas to 2 people, plus a dessert pizza for our patients to take home for our fridge. There was a wall of Pizza Hut boxes in our fridge. The thing is that Pizza Hut knew how to say the right things, but they didn't know how to deliver. They knew how to promise us cheeseless pizza, but they couldn't make their words match with their actions. And so we came to expect nothing but lies from them. And we did the only logical thing. We switched to Domino's. So there is an entire generation that expects nothing but lies from us. They have been told over and over again that the church loves and welcomes all people, but their experience of church people is not that. It seems like the church knows how to say all the right things, but sometimes we don't know how to make our actions match our words. We know how to promise love and welcome, but we don't know how to deliver on it. This is not a new problem. Even the early church had this problem. Just a few verses before the passage that we read in James 2 this morning, there's this hypothetical situation that doesn't feel so hypothetical. A person comes in the congregation, is dressed in nice clothes, and is given the prime seat. But then a person comes in rags and is cast aside. It seems that in every age, the church has needed to confront hypocrisy. But from where I sit, it seems to me that our ability to confront hypocrisy and to be authentic might make the difference in the witness of the church today. It might mean a different future for the church if we can confront hypocrisy and be authentic. My generation is leaving the church in droves, and it scares me. Church attendance is lowest among people who are aged 22 to 35, the millennial generation. And millennials, 59% of millennials who grew up in church have dropped out. And so think about if that trend continues with the next generation, that's almost 2/3. That's scary, my friends. And perhaps you're thinking that this conversation is old and tired, and you're tired of the church talking about how to capture the elusive millennial, or you think, well, I don't know any millennials, so this is not for me. But this conversation matters. First, because of where we sit. The demographic that's growing the most in downtown is millennials. And second, it matters because of the reasons that millennials are giving for leaving church. The reasons that they are giving are reasons that we all that are inside these walls need to hear. Millennials aren't leaving the church because they want a particular kind of music. They're not leaving the church because they want to wear jeans or they want to drink coffee in the sanctuary. Millennials aren't even leaving church because they think that Jesus is outdated. 66%, that is 2/3, 66% of millennials say that American Christians, American churchgoers, are hypocritical. Only 46% of millennials believe that churchgoers can tolerate someone who believes differently than they do. And less than half of millennials believe that they could be themselves in a church. And the reason that particular statistic is so troubling is because if you look at survey data, millennials over and over again rank authenticity as one of their top values. So much so that Forbes magazine ran an article in 2014 called Authenticity, the Way to the Millennial's Heart. And in it, they said that businesses needed to reevaluate and restructure their leadership and their advertising to capture my generation. But the thing is that the church should not have to restructure to capture my generation. The church was always meant to be authentic. We should be the place that millennials are coming to in droves. But we're not. So what happened? What went wrong? Where did we end up being the people that we were not supposed to be? The easy answer to that question is sin. And now you can all go home. I'm really just kidding. Y'all know I'm not done. But I think the more nuanced answer to that question is that we have let Jesus change our minds, but not our lives. We have let Jesus change our words, but not our actions. And that, my friends, is hypocrisy. The deeper that we've gotten into this sermon series, the more that I have heard it as an invitation to live an undivided life, to make sure that my words are matching my actions, to be the same person absolutely everywhere I go. It's an invitation to authenticity. And true authenticity is marked by three things for me: fidelity, consistency, and vulnerability. That fide in fidelity actually means faith. So the definition for fidelity is faithfulness to a person, a cause, or a belief. And running the risk of getting into semantics and also running the risk of showing you what a word nerd I am, which you may have already known that, but running that risk, I'm going to say that if belief and faith are in the same definition, they cannot mean the same thing. It seems to me that belief is a mental assent. It's that moment when we believe in God, or maybe it's that moment when we decide that this Jesus stuff might be real after all. But faith goes a step further. It's the difference in knowing the rules to football and getting on the field and playing the game. You see, the people who actually get on the field to play actually know the rules better than the people who know the rules, because they know why the rules are there. They've mastered them to the point that they can play. And in the same way, faith calls us beyond that moment of mental assent to many more moments of lived out action. Faith calls us to put our life in the hands of the one in whom we believe. And I think that's exactly what our passage in James is getting at this morning. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but do not have works? Can faith save you? James is not really getting into the how of salvation here. Here, James is trying to argue that faith that we simply say exists is no faith at all. It's simply belief, a mental assent to God. This kind of faith lets salvation infiltrate our brain, but it doesn't let it run from our head to our toes and out through our fingertips. If we are to be truly saved, then we are to be wholly saved. And that means that it's not just our minds that change, but it's our hearts and our souls and our actions too. When we are truly saved, we are wholly saved. From our head to our toes, we know it in the way and the disposition of our hearts and our attitudes of toward other people. We feel it with the conviction in our guts and the actions of our hands. The call to fidelity, the charge of faithful living, is an invitation to move beyond mere belief, to move to be wholly saved, to bring your actions in line with your words. And when your actions and your words match, there's no reason to be anything or anyone that you are not. So the call to fidelity is also a call to be who you are, to be faithful to who you are. But even better than that, be who God says you are. And God says that you are beloved. God says that you are a new creation. God says that you are claimed. God says that you are part of a family. God says that you are good. So live that way. Stop living like there's filth and pain and nastiness and anger and past hurts and defensiveness clinging to you. Sure, come into this space as you are, but then let God tell you who you really are. The second marker that I named for me is consistency. Be who you are across time and space. Be the same everywhere you go. This invitation to an undivided life in this sermon series for me has been an invitation to be the same in the pulpit as I am at the dinner table. It has been an invitation to give Caroline the same care and attention that I give to the congregation. It's been an invitation to offer the same grace at the grocery store that I offer on Sunday mornings to a visitor. Changing how you show up depending upon who you're with or where you are is exhausting. It's not healthy for you, and you will slip up. You will forget that you are at church, and you will say something mean. You will forget that you were in front of your kids, and you will put your elbows on the table or chew with your mouth open. You will forget that you are at work, and you will treat your coworkers like children. But if you're the same everywhere you go, then you don't have to worry about forgetting. I think that that's actually what James is getting at in this passage that's right before what we read. Somebody, as they were walking out of first service, I told them I probably should have just read the whole thing. But instead, your homework is to go read James 2. If you don't read James 2, then read the whole book. It's short. But this passage right before, I think James is getting at some consistency issues. This person with gold rings and fine clothing comes in and is given this wonderful seat. And then a poor person dressed in rags comes in and is cast aside. It seems that for James, this action does break the love your neighbor as yourself rule. James says that it dishonors the poor, but it seems that the church has slipped up. They've acted like they do out there in here. Perhaps they were living by different rules in the world than they thought they needed to live in the church, and they just got confused. But really, favoritism and partiality is not only unacceptable inside these walls. To honor the rich above the poor, to show favoritism to those with means over those that do not have means, it's unacceptable Christian behavior anywhere. And so the problem is not that they brought it inside the building. The problem is that they're not being consistent across the board, that they shouldn't be showing favoritism anywhere. It's not a slip up. It's a matter of being true to the faith. So showing up the same here as you do out there is essential to our witness. And as I'm talking about being consistent in the way that we show up, I'm not inviting you to consistently show up as a jerk. Okay, first service laughed, so I always expect a little bit of a bigger laugh here, but I'm really not inviting you to be a jerk. Be the person that God says you are across space and time. Be that person that God says you are everywhere you go. This Friday, the Source team had an invitation to go to a pool party at one of the apartment complexes that's near our West Campus. And so Ken and I went, and we brought popsicles because the fastest way to friendship in the city of Houston right now is cold treats. And so we'd been there about 20 minutes, and this older woman comes up to the fence, and she sticks her hot dog over the fence, and she says, "I need some ketchup." So I grab the ketchup, and I'm going, and I'm squirting the ketchup on her hot dog when I realize, which ketchup on an adult hot dog, we can have that conversation later, but I'm squirting this ketchup on her hot dog, and I realize that she is looking at me, giving me the side eye. She's kind of looking at me slant, and she says, "Who are you?" I said, "My name's Brandi. I'm one of the pastors at First Methodist Houston. Our church is there on the corner. It's less than a mile from here." And she said, "Okay." And I could tell that she was super suspicious about my presence. And she said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "We're just trying to get to know our neighbors." And then she said, "I've been delivering mail in this complex for over 30 years. And these people need some knowing. We all need some knowing. So the call to authenticity is not an invitation to wear the same mask everywhere you go. The call to an authenticity is an invitation to take off the mask, to be known for who you are and who God says you are, to not just pretend to be saved, but to actually be saved, to not just pretend to be transformed, but to actually be transformed. Vulnerability requires us to be who we are without the filter, without the mask, without hiding. Vulnerability requires courage and grace. And if we as the church want vulnerable people, if we want to be authentic people, if we want to confront our hypocrisy, then we have to stop making Just As I Am just an altar call song. Y'all know that song? Just as I am without one plea. It's not just an altar call. It has to be the way that we practice and embody grace. Where just as Jesus welcomed all, that we welcome all. And I mean really welcome all. Where just as Jesus loved all, we love all. And I mean really love all. This week I've been looking at Houston Chronicle's articles that are commemorating the 1-year anniversary of Harvey. And even last night as we were getting into bed, David and I looked at each other and said, "You remember what you were doing on this night a year ago?" And we both did. And I have to tell you that as I've been looking at these, the one that moved me most was not even really it was an article. It was a series of then and now pictures. It showed what Houston looked like a year ago, and it showed what we look like today. And the Chronicle tried to put some of the same people back in the same spots a year later. It's beautiful. It's eerie. It's painful. Several of the pictures are the insides of homes that have been completely restored. And I have to admit that on my first look at this article, I had this unexpected response, a response that I never dreamed that I would have. Instead of seeing these pictures and rejoicing, I initially thought, it's just a mask. Because I know that recovery efforts are still going on. I know that our city is still in pain. And so I thought, they're just hiding their trauma. They're sheetrocking over their pain. I saw this recovery as dishonesty. This was way early in the week. And as the week went on, the pictures wouldn't let me go. So I went back and I looked at them again. And then I saw it. It wasn't a mask after all. This is what God had always intended these people and these neighborhoods and this home to be. They're not broken and flooded out, but they're restored and repaired and made whole. They are returning to what God says they are. My prayer is that may be true of us as well. That we may be courageous enough to let people in when we're drowning, when our carpets reek of toxins, when we need some help cutting down a wall, tearing down a wall, and we need some help cutting out the gross stuff. May we be people that let people in. But may we also be people who never forget what God intends us to be. And God intends us to be new and restored and repaired and whole and undivided. Let's live that way. Let's pray.